Welcome, guys, back to Foul Play. Gemma's with me again today. And Gemma, I'm going to let you take this over and you introduce our guest.
Thanks, Shanester. Hi, everybody. I'm so glad to be back here with Shane. We're doing a really interesting episode, and we have a couple more coming up. Tonight, our guest's name is Beth, and she and I connected a couple weeks ago because she was friends in a teacher-student way with one of the major players from The Keepers. So we're going to ask her about that. And tonight, I want to introduce you to Beth. Hey, Beth.
Hey, everybody.
I'm just going to start by asking you a little bit about who you are and a little bit about your background so that we can then move into how you know Sister Russell.
I'm Beth. I'm 60 years old, and I'm presently in Southern Delaware. I'm from Maryland. I went to Martin Spalding High School. I graduated in 1979. I became friends with Sister Russell my sophomore year of high school. The reason that she and I connected was because at the time I was living in a community in Glen Burnie, Maryland, called Southgate. At the time, it was behind a hospital called North Arundel Hospital, but now it's called the Baltimore Washington Regional. And I lived in a community called Southgate. And in October of 1977, we had a triple murder in our neighborhood. Let me clarify that Sister Russell was not Sister Russell. She was Mrs. Welch. The reason why we became good buddies was that she had seen me on television because they had network news everywhere. Because back in 1977, triple murders were unheard of. And we had every newscast in our front yard. And she saw me on the news because I was with my friend next door, whose sister was part of the triple murder. And she grabbed me and shut the door and took me into her classroom and wanted to know how I was doing with the murder, because the two other girls that were also involved in this murder was two other girls that I used to babysit. And it was just mind-boggling to know that the kid that murdered them lived across the street from me. So it was just a very crazy thing that was going on. And she was really worried about me. And she looked me right in the eyes and she said, "You know what happened to me, so we don't really need to go any further with that. But I always want to know that you and I have one thing in common, and you can always come and talk to me anytime you need to." So that's what started the bond between the two of us. And that was always something that I will never forget with Mrs. Welch. So that's what started our relationship.
So you mentioned that she told you that you knew what happened to me. So did you already know about Sister Cathy in that entire situation by then?
Yes. When I went to school, when I started as a freshman, the kids in school, some of them I had known. And I knew too, because we moved to Maryland in 1969. And that happened the year that we moved to Maryland. And it was all over the news. And I knew for many years. And some of the kids had said to me that Mrs. Welch was Sister Cathy's roommate and she works at the school. And I was like, "Oh, I didn't know that." And they went, "Yes." And I was like, wow. And so, yeah, that was a very common fact. Everybody knew that she was working there.
How far was your school from that area of Baltimore where Cathy would have disappeared and was found?
Martin Spalding is in Severn, and it's off of New Cut Road, if you're familiar with that area. It's Severn and Glen Burnie kind of interconnect with each other. It's not too far. I would say from where Cathy and Russ live, I would think it was maybe 20, 25 minutes, maybe. Not
you didn't
too far.
Go to a Catholic school, did you?
Yes, that is a Catholic school.
Oh, okay. Okay.
At the time, it was called Martin Spalding High School, but they have since changed it to Archbishop Spalding High School. They changed the name, I think, in the 80s, late 80s, to Archbishop Spalding. So yes, it was a Catholic school. It started out as an all-female school, and then they changed it to a male and female school back in like the mid-70s.
I can clarify a little bit, Shane, because a lot of people like you didn't know about Martin Spalding. But after Cathy disappeared and was found, at that time, Sister Russell was teaching at Rock Glen Junior High, which is the building that you saw when you visited the area with me. And she would walk to school. And then I just talked to their friend, Pat Gilner, this week. And to clarify, when Cathy was found, Russ left Rock Glen and went to Spalding like in the middle of the year. She didn't finish out the year at Rock Glen, which I didn't know. But Martin Spalding, as Beth just said, was named for a bishop, like Archbishop Keogh was named for a bishop. And that was where Russ was teaching. And that's where she met her husband.
She was teaching math.
When was it that I know you're younger than I am, but not as young as the Shane Meister. When was it that you actually started at Spalding? And what year did you meet Russ?
I started Spalding in 76 and I met her in 77.
Okay. So
I knew of her, but I didn't actually do any reactions with her till October of 77. And then she taught me in 78 and 79, both years. She taught the juniors and seniors because she taught like B calculus.
Right. Did you guys know she had been a nun before you knew about the whole Sister Cathy thing? Like when she was just teaching there, did people know that she had left the convent and had been a nun?
Yes, that I did know because when the kids were talking, they said she was the nun that lived with Sister Cathy who was murdered. They all talked about that. That was like chit chat when you got into school. If you didn't know that, you were sure to know because the kids all made sure.
Yeah,
the kids made sure you knew that. I didn't connect the two until they talked about it. I didn't know that. I knew Cathy was murdered, but I didn't know Russ was living with her. Then when they told me, I was like, oh, wow, that's interesting. But I defended her after I met her. And if the kids talked about her, I always said, you guys need to stop talking about her. And I would get a little angry with them and say, stop.
Why did you do that? Why did you feel like they shouldn't be talking about her?
Because they had no clue what she was going through. They didn't know. And I didn't even know. And until I watched The Keepers, until I read your book, I had no clue what that woman was going through. And even back then, I didn't know what she was going through. I just figured you guys need to stop talking about her because she was such a kind and generous and caring woman. She was. It's just the way her mannerisms were. I didn't like people talking about her that way because I liked her. She was an excellent teacher. I loved Russ. She was an excellent teacher. She was good at what she did.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about what she was like as a teacher and some of your memories?
It was her mannerisms. It's the way she taught. If you didn't understand something, she would take the time to go back and show you again. She didn't make you feel like you were dumb just because you didn't understand it. And even if you didn't understand something, and she'd say, why don't you stay after class and we'll go over it real quick again. She was just really good about making sure that you understood it. She had patience. She was very patient. She just made you feel really good about yourself. And that's why I liked her.
You shared with me when we talked last week a really special moment that you had with Russ. And I'm hoping that you'll share that with everybody who's listening when she was saying goodbye to you.
It's something I've never told anybody. You're the first person I've ever told this to. My parents don't even know this. And my dad's dead, but my mom's alive. It's just something I've kept with me for a long time. I had my senior yearbook and we always run around the last day of our senior year. We don't ever go to classes, but we run around and we take our yearbooks to all our teachers and have them sign it and say goodbye to everybody. And it's a very emotional day for everybody because we're leaving. And I went around, got all my teachers to sign my yearbook, and I saved Russ for last. And I walked into her classroom and she signed my yearbook and she signed it and she talked. And the rest and I always talked about things. And we never talked about anything about her past. I always respected that about her. I never went into things that she never wanted to talk about. And she was really good about, let's talk about you. What's going on with you? What are the kids doing in school? Tell me about the dances. She was always really good about that. And she told me, she says, what are you going to do after you leave school today? And what are you going to do this summer? And so we yacked about that. And so she gave me a hug and she kissed me on the top of my forehead and she looked me straight in the eyes. And she said, I want to tell you one thing that I want you to remember. And I said, what's that? And she goes, don't ever let a man be superior to you. And when you're 18 years old, you don't think of that. Anything. It just flies over your head. Go, okay. So I hugged her. We cried for a few minutes and I walked out the door. And just like funny, I never, ever saw her again after that.
In retrospect, Beth, does that have a different, more essential meaning to you?
Sure. Now it has every meaning to me now. It means everything to me now. Now I know what it means. Now, watching The Keepers, when I finally got the nerve to do it, tells me what that really means. She was giving me a clue of how I should be. That was a clue for me. To this day, I was like, wow, it's mind-boggling, don't you think?
Yeah, it is for us too. Don't you think, Shane? Because we've often spent time talking with people who knew Russ well, but we've never talked to a student that she had from Martin Spalding who had a connection like you've had. And when we think now, to me, the statement that she made to you, it does tell me that she knew what was going on and that she wanted you to be aware and what was out there in the world.
It seemed like she cared about you and she wanted good things for you. And from her experience, from what Gemma and I know from talking to other people, it seems like she went through a lot of things. And that was one of the lessons that she learned, was men being superior to her. So as someone who cared about you, I can see how she would relay that to you. So the year that you had the triple murder happen next door and that she told you that you knew what happened to me, was that in October of 77?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
The guy that murdered the 3 little girls, his name is Stuart Kreiner. And it happened in Glen Burnie in the community of Southgate. He's no longer alive. He was in Patuxent, that place for people that are insane. Yes, I think he was there till 81. And then they found him one morning. He hung himself.
Oh, wow.
So it ended up with a very sad ending. He was a very bullied child. When he lived with us, a lot of the kids in the area were very mean to him. So I'm sure he didn't have a very good life. I know there was a lot of stories about what was going on with him and that kind of stuff. And who knows what was going on that day and what was in his mind. Those 3 little girls didn't deserve what happened to them. They were 7, 8, 9.
The day that she told you that you knew what happened to me, was that the only reference that you remember her ever making?
Yes. That is the only time that woman has ever made any reference to that, was the day I left to go to leave school. Yeah, that was the only day. And then, you know what? I never, ever talked to her about that. I respected her and I never brought it up. We only talked about school. We talked about what was going on in school with everybody. I respected her and I never brought it up because I knew it was a very hurtful and sore spot with her.
It's incredible that to me, it says she saw you a little bit like Cathy because you were the caregiver for those children. And if you babysat those children, you're 17, it was like Cathy and caring about the girls who were being hurt. And so she probably realized how personal this was going to be to you.
It was very personal. He hurt 3 little girls that I cared for. Yeah. One of them was my best friend's little sister, and I loved her to death. I didn't babysit her, but the other girls down the street I did. And they played with those little girls. Sometimes when I was babysitting, she used to come down and play with them too. That's how 3 of them messed me sometimes. And it's so sad to have their lives ended like that. It was horrible.
I bet Russ kept her eye on you in a good way for the rest of that year. Just
I'm sure
to see if there were signs, that you were having trauma. Did you know the man she married, Mr. Welch?
Yes, he was a language arts teacher.
Same school, right?
Same school. I didn't have him for a teacher, but I knew who he was.
I know he's living, but he's requested that nobody invade his privacy because he doesn't want to talk about this, and that's okay. I do have a question for you. I was told by their friend Pat that Russ, I think it must have been the first full year she was there, which would have been like 70, 71, that she was the assistant principal. Does that ring a bell?
Oh, no, I know.
And then she opted not to do that and went back to being a teacher?
No, that I did not know.
Yeah. I
No,
just was curious. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. No, because you got to remember, I didn't go to school there until 76. That I did not know. Wow, that's some interesting news. I had no clue.
Yeah, I think she was. I think
really.
I believe that she went to Spalding after Cathy was found and then finished that year at Spalding. And I think it was the next year that she was invited to be the assistant principal and then did it. And then I think after 1 year went back to being a teacher, but don't quote me because I'm not absolutely sure of the time.
You know what? I'll have to ask some friends that like older friends that were there, because some friends that went there when like 71, 72 and ask them if they know. Yeah, and see what because I did not know that. Interesting. Do you know what year she married?
I don't know. I know they met at Spalding, but I don't know. I could find that out because people have asked about that.
Foul Play is brought to you in part by Nutrafol. Hair loss among men is well known and talked about. It's no secret. But did you know that 30 million women are also impacted by weakened or thinning hair? If you're one of them, I want you to know that you're not alone, and there's a solution that you can trust to deliver results. Join thousands of women who have taken back control of their hair with Nutrafol. There are many users raving that the supplement not only transformed their hair, but restored their confidence too. I use Nutrafol myself. They have a formula for both men and women. And with my experience, it has not only improved my hair, but also my scalp. Before taking Nutrafol, my hair and scalp would sometimes get itchy. But after taking Nutrafol, that hasn't been a problem for me anymore. You can grow thicker, healthier hair and support our show by going to Nutrafol.com and entering the promo code FOULCRIME to save 20% off your first month's subscription. This is their best offer anywhere, and it is only available to U.S. customers for a limited time, plus free shipping on every order. Get 20% off at Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code FOULCRIME. Foul Play is also brought to you by June's Journey. Okay, stop whatever you're doing because you will want to hear this. If you're like me, then you love a good mystery. And that's why I'm suggesting that you take out your smartphone right now and download June's Journey. This is one of my go-to games for my phone right now. I absolutely love it. It's a hidden object murder mystery. Need I say more? You'll awaken your inner sleuth and step right into the heart of the Roaring Twenties. When you start playing, you get introduced to your character. Her name is June Parker, and she's an amateur detective who is investigating the mysterious death of her sister. The game is free to download, and it's so easy to pick up and put down whenever it's convenient for you to play. Personally, I play anytime I have free time, or need to waste a little time, like in waiting rooms or waiting for episodes to upload. If you're a fan of crime, history, or games, then this is the game for you. Join myself and 30 million other fans across the globe and awaken your inner detective with June's Journey. Download June's Journey free today on the Apple App Store or Google Play. When you heard about The Keepers being out, did you immediately know that Russell was going to be in it?
Yes, I did. And it took me a long time to watch it because I knew she was going to be in it. And I knew it was going to be tough to watch because she was in it.
Yeah.
So it took me a while to watch it because I knew it was going to be heartbreaking because she wasn't.
And what did you take away from it after you watched?
I was like, whoa. It shook my faith big time. It makes me want to go out and solve this murder. It just totally blows my mind. There's just so many questions. Who did this to her? And why? I don't get it. I just don't get it. There's just so many people that are involved in this. And why would they do this to this woman?
Yeah, I think everybody that's listening and has seen The Keepers they're shaking their head right now saying the same thing, because why destroy this human being who had so much to share? And a lot of people have taken Russell's character of being quiet as hiding things, which is ridiculous. So It means a lot for us to hear about what she was like as a person.
There's too many people out there that are like, why didn't she call the police? You don't know her. You don't know what was going on in her mind. You don't know what she was doing. But you can't sit there and say that. You don't know what Maskell was saying to her. You don't know what that other priest was saying to her. She was probably terrified.
I agree with you. I've often thought about what Shane and I have talked about this. What would we do if somebody said your choices are talk or die?
Exactly.
I'd keep my mouth shut. If you talk, you're going to die.
I think it's pretty significant that Beth is telling us that what Russell told her almost 8 years after Cathy disappeared, was murdered. She didn't say, Beth, my best friend was murdered. She didn't say that. She said, what happened to me? And to me, that sounds like someone who's coming from a place of a lot of pain and fear. If she's wanting to connect with Beth, it just seems to me like she would have said, my best friend was murdered and that hurt a lot and I deal with that every day. But what she said was, what happened to me? And that's something that we've heard from the other people that we've spoken to that knew Sister Russell, is that she never would speak about it. She wouldn't hint about it, not want it to be brought up. And that just all to me points to it was very painful.
Beth, tell us what she would say to her classes the first day of class.
Yeah, she would walk in and if weren't in her class yet, if you had had her for a teacher, she would come in. She'd say, hi, my name is Mrs. Welch. And she'd say, this is what we're doing. And this is what I need you to get for your supplies and things like that. She'd go through all of that. And then at the very end, she would say, and I want to bring up one other thing too. We're not discussing what happened to me in 1969. That is my prior life, and we're not discussing it. Case closed. And she always said that.
There you go.
Yeah, and you know what? And I'll never forget this one boy that was in our class looked at her and said, so did they ever find out who killed her? I could not believe he said that. I turned around and I looked at him and I said to myself, you're an idiot.
She was setting the guidelines and he stepped over the line. But there's always somebody like that in a class.
Oh, yeah, I know. And what's really funny is when we walked out in the hallway after class, this one girl that was sitting next to me, when we walked out in the hall, you know what she did? She walked outside and I was standing next to her and she walked up to him and she kicked him in the butt. Kicked him in the butt and she goes, she looked at him and she goes, good going, Ace.
This is the kind of atmosphere those two nuns, those two women created. It was one where you were respectful, you respected and cared for them, and whatever guidelines they set, that was okay with us. We wanted to do what they were setting out. It just makes me feel so good, Beth, to hear you talk about her as such a real person that made such a positive impact on you.
And she is a real person. And she deserves respect. And she deserves to rest in peace. And people need to stop making her the fall guy.
You're saying that, yeah. What do you want people who are listening to know or say? Anything?
That she's a good person. She's a wonderful person. And that she deserves respect. And, you know, what she did, what she thought was the right thing. She was protecting her family, just like anybody else would have done. I want people to leave her alone. She's a good person. And she needs to rest in peace.
Hey, Gemma, I have a question for you.
Yes.
And this is just from my life of knowledge dealing with Catholic schools. But Beth was talking about how her high school was also a Catholic school. Do the Catholic schools at that time not just hire nuns? So like, for example, Sister Russell was now married.
No, it's not all nuns. They're called lay teachers, Lay. And I don't know if you remember looking in my yearbook, but there were a lot of pictures of men and women who taught there and were not priests or nuns. I guess it was half and half for me. What about Spalding, Beth? Were there nuns there?
Not a lot.
No, they had habits. Did they wear habits?
They wore regular clothes. They were not habits. They wore like a cross on their, they were from the Notre Dame.
Sisters of Notre Dame.
And it had the Notre Dame because they had a convent off of our school. Right off of our school.
Exactly. The same as Kate.
Yeah. And they were not Now, some of them wore the thing over there on their head. They just wore regular clothes. Some of them still have it on their head. Not many of them, but I would say we probably had maybe 7 nuns in the whole school, and that was about it. We didn't even have a priest on staff. We had one that came in and said mass for us, who was part of a priest that was part of I think it was Saint Bernadette that was around the corner. He came over and said mass for us on Wednesdays. He wasn't even part of our school. We didn't even have a priest in school like you did.
Yeah. Now, Matt, the priest didn't live there, but Maskell, it's interesting that you brought that up because he was originally at St. Clement's, which was a parochial elementary school parish. And once Charles's mom reported him, he was moved to Keogh, but just for his day job. So he still lived at St. Clement's. And so he would be at Keogh during the day, and then he would drive back to the rectory at St. Clement's and see the kids after school. I don't know. I don't know what the church thought they were doing. All that mixing up happened a lot. I'm guessing we probably had, when we were full, there were 1,200 girls. I'm thinking we probably had 60 faculty members, and probably half of them were lay teachers and half were religious. So that's probably pretty typical of Catholic high schools at the time.
And I don't even know to this day, I don't even know how many nuns are there. Probably not that even many right now.
Right.
Probably maybe, I don't think there probably is even any more that I know of that are at school. I'd have to ask somebody, but I doubt if there isn't even any right now that are even teach there.
I know that you mentioned that the last time you spoke to Sister Russell, or as you knew her as Miss Welch, was that day that she gave you that information about a maiden authority. But do you ever remember learning about her dying?
Yeah, somebody told me that she had passed away in May of 2001. I was living in Maryland. One of my friends from Spalding had called me on the phone and said, I have some really sad news. I said, what's that? And she goes, Mrs. Welch passed away today. And I was like, I was just dumbfounded. And I was heartbroken. I was like, oh, that's horrible. I wish I could have sent flowers. But nobody could. John was so secret about everything. We didn't even know where to send him and where to go to. He was very secretive about her stuff. He didn't really let everybody know what was going on with her funeral or anything. Yeah. Did you know anything, Gemma?
Only from her friend, Pat Gilner, who was also in the keeper. She was the former nun, was an art teacher, and a real pretty lady in a white apartment and everything very pristine. She's a very good friend now. And she told me that she had talked to Russ the day before that because Maskell had died the day before that. Right. And it was almost like, I don't know, maybe I'm really into holistic health. So I think sometimes the things in our lives that cause trauma can also cause physical ailments. And she died of melanoma. And like, for example, Jean Wayner's husband dying of esophageal cancer. And we talk about how he had to just stuff everything. And I think because Russ was the kind of person that was able to keep things in and not like she could wrap them up and put them in there and not go back to them, which is what she was always sound like she would say to her classes, like, we're not going to go back there. That's not my life anymore. But she wanted to share the lessons learned with you. But I think Pat would probably know more about the funeral or how she was memorialized. And I can always ask. But we're just so appreciative that you reached out and found me. And
I am too.
And
it really helped me tremendously.
Yeah, it means a lot. And I think a lot of people are really thirsty for information about her and just to hear, because 90% of the people who saw the keepers believe that she was not complicit in any wrongdoing. But it's always nice to hear from people that knew her when they were younger and she was their teacher. So anyway, thank you, Beth.
Oh, you're very welcome. And thank you for having me. I hope this brings people some solitude to people to know that she is a wonderful person and she deserves the respect from people because she is a good person. And they have to also understand that she was probably going through a very hard time, knowing that who knows what she was going through the night that Maskell was at her apartment. Never know what was told to her. So she was just protecting who she needed to protect. I give her a lot of kudos for doing what she had to do.
I think Sister Russell will be really happy that you took the time also to talk good things about her.
Yeah.
She's a good person, and she had such a great disposition about her, and she had such a soft
Demeanor. Yeah.
She was wonderful. She always made you feel so good about yourself, especially when you were frustrated. You know how math can be so frustrating. And trust me, math was very frustrating for me. I always sit there and I never felt dumb around her. And that's what I always liked about her. I used to look at her and go, "What is this Chinese?" She goes, she would laugh and say, "Let's go on Chinese it for you."
Oh.
Yeah. And she was such a great teacher. She could teach you how to do something and it would make so much sense to you. That's what was so great about her. She was a wonderful teacher. I miss her softness and the way she was.
That's really true. Yeah. Very gentle.
And she was.